And we are live! Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mishnah Mastery! Whee! With our live virtual studio audience on Zoom and the millions watching on YouTube. It's wonderful to have you on board. As tonight, we try and learn together chapters 3 and 4 of Masechet Kerisus. And tonight, as we start off with chapter 3, we are going to be talking about the halachot of the korban chatat, the parameters for when you would bring a sin offering. So we've said that if you do an aveira b'shogeg, if you do something by accident, which should have the penalty of karet, of spiritual excision, but you've done it by accident, so then the punishment will be a korban chatat, a sin offering. So it would mean that you have done something that you didn't know was forbidden when you did the aveira. So that's what we are dealing with over here. So the Mishnah says, chapter 3, Mishnah 1, Mishnah Aleph, Amru lo achalta chelev. So witnesses said to a person, it might even be one witness that says to you, achalta chelev, you have eaten forbidden fats. So what should you do? So the Mishnah says, mevi chatas. So then you should bring a korban chatas. What if? Eid omer achal, ve'eid omer lo achal. What if one witness says, I saw you eating forbidden fat, and one witness says, you did not eat forbidden fat, it was actually kosher. So what should you do in that situation? Or in a different situation? Isha omeres achal, ve'isha omeres lo achal. What if a woman says to you, you ate forbidden fat, or a woman says to you that you didn't? So we've got two situations here. One is a single witness, whereas normally we would require two witnesses to testify against you. So what if you have one witness testifying? Or what if you have a woman testifying, where ordinarily you would not take the testimony, you would not believe the testimony of a woman? So what happens if they bring forward this, making you aware that you have eaten this forbidden fat or not eaten this forbidden fat? So then, maybe asham talui. So then you should bring a limbo guilt offering, an asham talui. Eid omer. Pardon me?
We need the slide. We haven't got the slide.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Oh my goodness me. There we go. I'm sorry. Fine. So, just to briefly recap. So, you have, someone says you've eaten forbidden fat, bring a korban chatat. One witness says you ate, one witness says you didn't. You have contradictory testimony, and you're not sure which way around it should be. And it's all b'shogeg anyway. One woman says that you ate, and one woman says you didn't eat. Maybe asham talui. So then you bring the limbo guilt offering. It says the Mishnah, Eid omer achal, v'hu omer lo achalti, patur. If one witness was to say to you that they saw you eating forbidden fat, and you turn around and you say, no, I didn't. So then, in such an instance, the Mishnah says, patur, you are exempt from any further korban. Shnayim omrim achal, if two witnesses say that you ate forbidden fat, v'hu omer lo achalti, and you turn around and you say, no, I didn't. Rabbi Meir machayev. Rabbi Meir would say, I mean, this sounds like a classic case of two witnesses against one. So Rabbi Meir says you should be liable in that instance then to bring a korban chatas. Amar Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, Im hevi'uhu shnaim lemisa chamura. Rabbi Meir says that if two people would be capable of let me just check that I've got this right. Yeah. So Rabbi Meir is bringing a kol v'chomer, and he says that if two witnesses could bring liability to someone, could make them liable to the death penalty, that the way in which a person would be convicted of a crime that would be deserved of a death penalty would be through two witnesses. So he asks, Lo yavi'uhu lekorban hakal, should it not be then that two witnesses can generate the punishment of having him eat a korban chatas? So that's his backup, that is his support to his position, that if two against one, two witnesses against you, you should have to bring a korban chatas for eating this forbidden fat. Amru lo, but the chachamim say back to him, the rabbis say back to him, ma, why should that be the case? Im yirtza loma mezid hayisi. He has an escape clause, because in this case, if he was to turn around and said that he ate forbidden fat on purpose, right, then he's not going to be chayav chatas. He's not going to be obligated to bring a korban, because he was never warned beforehand. The way it works is when a person commits an aveira b'mezid, it means that they have done something intentionally after having been warned by two witnesses. So we're in a situation where the guy ate something, he wasn't warned beforehand. Afterwards, two witnesses came along and said, I saw you eating forbidden fat. You said, no, I didn't. So what's the halacha? So Rabbi Meir says, well, this is a classic 2-on-1 case. So you should be obligated, you should be liable to bring a korban chatas. But the rabbis say no, because after the fact, if two witnesses come and claim something against you, you could just turn around and say, yeah, I know, I did it, and I did it on purpose. But you can't do anything to me because you didn't warn me beforehand, number one. And number two, I can't get the punishment of makkahs because you didn't warn me beforehand. So I've got an escape clause. I can just turn around and say that I did it on purpose, and then I don't have to do anything. And so because of that, the rabbis said that you don't have to bring a korban chatas. And that way we don't put him into the situation of testifying in court falsely that he did something on purpose in order to get out of any liability. And so that is why the chachamim take a different stance. You would be exempt from punishment if it was a 2 against 1 and you were to deny having eaten those forbidden fats. Mishnah base. So generally, when a person does multiple aveirot, violates the same mitzvah over and over again, so you should be liable for each and every single time. But there are exceptions to this rule. Says the Mishnah, Achal chelev v'chelev behelen echad. If a person ate numerous pieces of fat, they were all the requisite size of a kazayas, and he ate several pieces, so we should think then that he should be liable each time. But he did it in one lapse of awareness, meaning that he ate all of these pieces in one sitting of not realizing that it was forbidden to him. So the Mishnah says, Eino chayev ela chatas echad. If it was one time period of mental lapse, then he's only going to be chayev one korban chatas. Achal chelev v'dam v'nosar ufigul behelem echad chayev kol echad v'echad. But if within one sitting he was to eat forbidden fat, he was to consume forbidden blood, he was to eat leftover korbanot, that nosar, or he was to eat pigul, and he was to eat 4 different things within that one lapse. So those are 4 separate violations. And because they're 4 separate violations, even though they're in one time lapse, chayav al kol echad ve'echad, he's going to be liable to bring a korban chatas for each and every one of those transgressions. Zechomer b'minin harbe b'min echad. And this, the Mishnah says, is a stringency that applies to an instance where you have violated several different types of things, whereas when you violate the same thing over and over again, it doesn't generate a separate korban for each time. And the Mishnah says, though, the opposite way, v'chomer b'min echad meminin harbe. But there is a stringency that applies to the violation of the same prohibition, which would not apply to somebody who violates different prohibitions. Shem achal kachatzi zayis, v'chazar v'achal kachatzi zayis mimen echad chayav. Because if within one sitting, within one time lapse, he was to eat half an olive bulk, and then he would go and eat another half an olive bulk within the same lapse of awareness, so then the Mishnah would the halacha would combine those 2 things together. So if he ate half a kazayas of fat and half a kazayas of fat 10 minutes later, whatever it is, without having any interruption in between by a witness to say, hey, you're not allowed to do that. So then that's considered helem echad, one time lapse. So you're going to be liable to bring the korban chatas because you have consumed in that time frame a whole olive bulk. But if you were to eat half a olive's bulk of fat and half an olive's bulk of nosar, they're not going to combine together. And that's why it's one stringency there for a min echad, for the violation of one type of prohibition, which would not apply to the violation of several different types. Mishnei minin pater, if you were to consume multiple different types of isurim, of prohibited food items, then you're going to be exempt. Mishnah Gimel, v'chama yish ha'ochlan. So what then is considered to be this kind of this he'elem echad, this time lapse? What kind of time frame are we talking about here, where if you were to eat multiple pieces that combine to the required size, that it will be liable? So the Mishnah says, Ki'ilu achalan kalayos divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, it's the time for you to eat roasted seeds. What does this mean? Well, a person would eat roasted, toasted seeds, toasted grain, very, very gradually. A seed here, for people who dip into sunflower seeds, for example, where you just kind of sit there. Have you ever seen the Israelis doing that? Just plowing through seed by seed over hours and hours of time. So these things are eaten gradually, they're eaten slowly. Similar thing would be, I guess, to eating cashew nuts and the like. You're going through those things very, very gradually, rather than stuffing your face all in one go. So the sitting can be quite a long sitting. The Chachamim say, it's the time that it would take a person to eat achilas pras. What is achilas pras? So it translates it on the screen there. The time which it would take to eat half a loaf of bread. So if you eat these half kazayas amounts within the time frame that it would take to eat half a loaf of bread, which quantity-wise is the equivalent to 6 or 8 eggs worth, egg-sized bites of bread, which is, I guess, about the size of half a loaf of bread. So that's the time window that you're dealing with. We see this time window in other areas of halacha as well, by the way. That's how long you're supposed to eat a kazayas of bread when you make hamotzi. So in order to justify your bracha, so to speak, and to bring yourself to a halachic requirement for birkat hamazon, for benching, you have to eat this amount of bread within kedei achilas pras, within this time period. So this comes up in different places. So continues the Mishnah. I've completely lost my place. Yeah, so that's the position of the Chachamim. Achal achalim tameim. If a person eats ritually impure food, v'shasa mashkin tameim, and drinks tamei liquids. So biblically, if you eat or drink things which are tamei, you don't become tamei. But rabbinically, you could create other food things to become tamei if eaten in close proximity. So achal achalim tamei v'shasa mashkin tamei. You've eaten tamei food or you've drunk tamei liquids. Shasa ravi'in yayin v'nichnas lamikdash, and then you've drunk a quarter log of wine. So separately to that, you've drunk pure wine, but you've drunk wine before going into the Beis HaMikdash. So if you've done any of those things, v'shaha kadei achilas pras, and then you've waited the time period of kadei achilas pras. So Rabbi Eliezer says, "Im hifsik ba or shenas anasach mayim kol shehu patur." So the point is as follows: that if you have eaten this tamei food very quickly, and then very soon after that you've consumed something like teruma, so rabbinically that tumah is going to get passed on to the teruma, which you're not allowed to do. But if enough time has passed, if kadei achilas pras has passed, then it would be fine. Similarly, if you have drunk a revius of wine you can't go into the Beis Hamikdash to serve. You've had too much to drink. But if this time period has elapsed, then you would be able to go in. So that is what the Mishnah over here is telling us. So if not enough time has passed for these things, then you are going to incur liability if you then went into the Beis Hamikdash, or if you then ate teruma. Rabbi Elazar says, however, that with regards to the wine, if you were to also drink alongside that some water, then you're going to dilute the wine, and then it's going to be allowed for you to go into the Beis Hamikdash. Of course, if you drink too much, then it's going to be a problem either way. Mishnah Dalet. So Mishnah Dalet is going to tell us that a person could eat one piece of meat and yet could be chayav multiple times for multiple sacrifices. So this is the start of where things start to get a little bit complicated for us. What we're going to see here is that with one, and over the next few Mishnahs, with one action, a person could violate numerous mitzvot in the Torah, and therefore have to bring a korban for each thing. So this is with one action, and yet so many repercussions could arise. So the Mishnah says, Yesh ochel achila achas v'chayev aleha arba chatos v'asham echad. A person could eat something and yet have to bring 4 korban chatats and 1 korban asham. So 5 sacrifices just from eating one piece of something. Says the Mishnah, Tamei she'achal es achelev. You have a person who is ritually impure and he eats a piece of forbidden fat. So that is already one thing that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to eat a piece of forbidden fat. But not only that, v'haya nosar. Not only that, but it was left over from a korban. Okay, so a tummy person can't eat from sacrificial food, and he can't eat from nosar. So already you've gone and done 3 problematic things. Min mukdashim. Oh, that was the third one. It was something that was consecrated to the Beis Hamikdash, and uva Yom Kippurim, and it was Yom Kippur as well. So over here you have done 4 things that have generated for you a korban chatas. The 5th thing that generates the korban asham is the fact that you have misappropriated temple property. You have violated the mitzvah of me'ilah. So you could bring up to 5 sacrifices on account of this one action. Says the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir Omer, Im Haisa Shabbos. If it was Shabbos as well, Votzio Bepiv Chayav. So if you were carrying it in your mouth while you were eating it, so Rabbi Meir says you could even violate another prohibition, and it's going to stack up even more for you, and you're going to have another korban to bring. Amru lo, say the Chachamim, say the rabbis back to him, Eino min Hashem. You can't really include this in what I'm trying to do over here, because you're right that it would be a violation of halacha, but we're trying to talk about eating something and generating 5 korbanos. You can't really say that carrying is included in the same as I realize it's in his mouth. I realize that it's going in the same direction, but you're not stacking up another korban because you're eating it. You're carrying it, sure, I agree with you. It's going to generate another prohibition, but don't spoil my fun over here, say the Chachamim. I'm trying to demonstrate that you can violate 5 different commandments, bring 5 different sacrifices just by eating one piece of forbidden food. Mishnah 5. This is where it gets even more technical and even more difficult to explain. So for this, I'm actually going to share a diagram. My face is going to disappear. I'm sure you're all going to be miserable for a few minutes, but this is a diagram which is going to help us understand what we're talking about. In this Mishnah, we are going to be told the following, that it is possible for a person to have to have intimate relations one time, right? And in so doing is going to bring about on himself a violation of multiple prohibitions. So one person is going to create a huge problem for him of multiple prohibitions. That's what we're talking about. Some of these things are going to happen instantaneously, simultaneously. Some of these things are going to be new violations that come about on account of who this individual is. And some of these violations come about because of things piling on in terms of who this person is. Now, it's technical, it's detailed. I'm going to see if I can explain it well enough. But what we're going to see is that one occasion of a person being intimate with another person could bring about 6 prohibitions, 6 violations that the person commits. So there's going to be 3 scenarios, if I'm not mistaken, but they're all based on the initial scenario over here. So it's going to impact on multiple different ways, but all the cases in this Mishnah follow the same family structure, which should not be confused with the actual biblical characters, but the family tree helps us to understand the family dynamics that we're talking about. So over here, you've got the following situation. You've got Yitzchak, who has had 2 sons, Yaakov and Esav. You've got Yaakov, who has married Rachel and Leah. You've got Yaakov, who has had with Rachel, Yosef and Binyamin. With Leah, he has had Reuven. Separately to that, Leah has had Dinah. So Dinah to Reuven is his sister, essentially, through Leah, right? Now, here is where it gets interesting, right? Are you going to bed? No, so please go out the room while I'm doing teaching this, okay? This isn't for your ears, darling. So this is our family tree, and the problematic relationship that we have is Reuven being intimate with Leah, right? That is the union that is concerning us, and that union creates or can create 6 prohibitions. There's the prohibition of the fact that Dinah is his sister, and so Reuven is intimate with Leah, and as a result of that, they have a child, Dinah, right? I think that's what we're dealing with here. So Reuven and Leah are intimate together, his son with his mother. As a result of that, Dinah is born. So now this is what happens. There's a prohibition here that he has violated because Dinah is his sister and Dinah is his daughter. She, Dinah, is also a mamzeres, right? And nobody is allowed to marry her. And if Dinah goes and marries Yosef, which is her half brother, which biblically is allowed. So if Dinah goes and marries Yosef, so now you've got another problem there, because it means that, well, we'll see what it means in a minute. Now, if Yosef was to die or Yosef was to divorce her, and then Dinah goes and marries Esav, right? So that's going to create another prohibition. So let's see what I'm talking about over here. All right. Our Mishnah tells us, Yesh bia, Yesh. Which Mishnah are we on? Hey. Yesh ba bia achas v'chayav aleha sheish chataos. A person could have one act of intimate relations, and it will bring about liability for 6 korban chatats. Haba al bito. It's the fact that that he has engaged. So one sec. No. So what is he? Sorry. Oh, okay. Just to try and explain this a little better again. I'm sorry. I think I'm messing this up. So Leah and Reuven have had a daughter, Dinah, and Reuven has now been intimate with Dinah. My apologies. Right? So Reuven being intimate with Dinah now creates 6 prohibitions. He has violated the prohibition because he has been intimate with his daughter, but the daughter was also his sister, right? So, haba al bito, chayav aleha mishum bito. He has violated because it's his daughter. Va'achoto, it's also his sister because she was born from Leah, the same mother. Ve'eshes achiv, and she is also the wife of his brother because she had married Yosef. Ve'eshes achi aviv. So even after Yosef dies or divorces, she would still be forbidden to him, right? So she's also married Esav. So therefore, ve'eshes achiv, it's also the wife of his brother. Ve'eshes achi aviv. Oh, I'm really messing this up. This is why I said it's so technical. Forgive me. So he's violated because it's his daughter, and it's his sister, and it's his sister-in-law because she had married Yosef. And at some point in history, she had divorced him or he had died, and then she'd gone and married Esav. So now it's also a violation of Eshes Achi Aviv, the wife of his father's brother, Uncle Esav, the Eshes Ish, and she's also a married woman, and therefore he has violated that as well. Vanida, and she was also a Nida at the same time. So just by having this relationship with Dinah, all right, all of that can come about. The second case, don't know how we're going to explain this one, right? The second case requires us to also understand that that Reuven now has a granddaughter as well called Serach. Right? Now, Serach is the product of his father-in-law giving birth to a child with his daughter. Right? Just to compound the problem, right? So his father-in-law has had a child with his daughter, and this child is called Serach. So Serach is, on the one hand, his granddaughter. On the other hand, it's his sister-in-law, because Reuven was married to B, and B's sister is Serach, right? Because she's been born to the same father. So anyone learning Yevamos, by the way, is going to understand the pain and turmoil that I'm going through with explaining all of this. So Serach is related to Reuven as his granddaughter and also as his sister-in-law, right? Then Serach goes and marries Chanoch. Serach marries Reuven's son. So now she is his daughter-in-law as well. So that is why, if he was to go and have a relationship with Serach, the Mishnah tells us, Haba al bas bito, if he was to have relations with his granddaughter, he could violate the following. Chayav aleh mishum bas bito, she's forbidden to him because she is his granddaughter. V'chalato, but she's also his daughter-in-law. Va'achos ishto, and she is also his sister-in-law. Va'eshes achiv, and she is also the wife of his brother. How is he the wife of his brother? And this, the wife of his, the wife of his brother. Oh, I think that's if she now goes and marries Yosef as well. It just gets more and more, yeah. So she marries Yosef and she marries Esav. So now we're piling on more and more problems here. So Ve'eshes Achiv, if she had married Yosef, then he would also violate on that account. Ve'eshes Achi Aviv, if she had then gone and married Esav, that would be another prohibition. Ve'eshes Ish, and she's a married woman, and she's a Nida. So that is how Reuven, through one simple or not so simple act, could be violating multiple prohibitions. Rabbi Yossi, just to complicate things even further, Rabbi Yossi says, Im avar hazakein unusa'a, if Yaakov, if Reuven's father had gone and married her, right? Because of Yibum, right? So if she had died, if her husband had died childless and he had gone and fulfilled the mitzvah of Yibum, then chayav aleha mishum eshes av. He could violate another prohibition because now it's the wife of his father as well. Point is, guys, just don't sleep with family members. That's where we're getting to. But what we're trying to demonstrate here is how one act can bring about multiple different violations, multiple different korbanot through one very dysfunctional family. And then the final case, v'chein haba al bas ishtar, and if it was also the case that this person was the daughter of his wife, then you could violate that as well. But al bas ishtar as well. And if it was his granddaughter through his wife's granddaughter, then you could compound the problem even further with more violations. You got to just draw this up for yourselves and just to see how the family dynamics work. I've tried to make it as clear as I possibly could, but as I said, this is a long chapter. Very good. Mishnah Vav. Questions on a postcard. Now we've got to picture the following. We have to picture Reuven having a relationship with Dinah, right? And Dinah is the daughter of Leah. And also the daughter of Lavan, which would be Leah's father, right? So Leah and her father have had a child called Dinah, and now Reuven is having a relationship with Dinah. So Dinah, I guess, is his sister through his mother, I think. So, is that where we're going with this? Okay. So Lavan has had relations with Leah. Dinah, I see. And then Dinah is now her daughter and also her sister because Lavan is the same father. Oh, beautiful. So, Haba al Chamoso. If Reuven comes and has a relationship with Dinah, right, then she is going to be a mother-in-law as well as a sister-in-law. No, again, guys, follow. Reuven has a relationship with Leah. Here we go. Reuven is going to have a relationship with Leah. Just stay away from these people, guys. So, Haba al Chamoso. So, Reuven has a relationship with Leah. Chayav aleh mishum chamoso. So, it's going to be forbidden because it's... Got it, fine. Lavan and Leah have a child. That child is called Dinah. Reuven marries that child, Dinah. So, Leah is now her mother-in-law. Leah and Dinah are now mother and sister at the same time. So, if Reuven now has a relationship with his mother-in-law, he's going to be liable because it's his mother-in-law, and also it's his daughter-in-law. How? And also the sister of his wife, and also the wife of his brother, because Leah went and... Okay, so Leah's also marrying Reuven's son. Okay. Oh, goodness me. Okay, so Leah's also married Reuven's son, which makes Dinah also his daughter-in-law, which makes it also the wife of his brother, because the son divorced or died, so she married Yosef. I mean, come on, guys. It's also Eshes Achi Aviv, if she had then married Esav, and Eshes Ish, because she was married, and Nida, because she was Nida, just to compound the problem. Guys, go to town on this. V'chein haba al ein chamoso. Also, someone who, if Leah and Reuven now had a relationship, so now it's the mother. if he now would have a relationship with the mother of his mother-in-law, so then and va'al aim chamiv, and also the mother of his father-in-law, so then you could be compounding the problem even more. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri comes to save us a little bit here. Haba al chamoso, one who has a relationship with his mother-in-law, chayav aleh mishum chamoso ve'ein chamiv. No, he doesn't save us over here at all. Ah! Philip is loving this. So, oh my gosh, this is so complicated. Mark's just like falling off the edge of the world. I told you this one's going to be a disaster. So, oh, goodness me. I mean, the diagrams that I've got here, okay, you've got Reuven having a relationship with Rachel, who is the daughter of Lavan, while at the same time being the sister of Dinah, while at the same time, I don't know what's going on. The point is, you can really screw yourself up and really get yourself tied in knots if you have a dysfunctional family. So, oh my gosh, it just goes on and on and on, and it's horrendous over here. Okay, let's try and unpack something for ourselves. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Haba al chamoso, a person who has a relationship with his mother-in-law could be violating mishum chamoso, ve'ein chamiv, could be violating the fact, could be liable because of the fact that it was his mother-in-law, the mother of his mother-in-law, and the mother of his father-in-law. And so therefore, if that was the case, if you were able to construct in your imagination a case where she is all of those three positions in one time, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri would say, you are liable 3 times. However, the rabbis say to him, Amru lo, shloshtan shem echad hein. No, if she was simultaneously the mother-in-law, the mother of your mother-in-law, and the mother of your father-in-law, then they would say they're all derived from the same prohibition, and so it's only going to be one category of korban. Guys, we could spend an eternity and forever on drawing up the family tree to be able to really get to grips with this Mishnah. Let's agree to do that the next time around, because it is so complex how this all works. The point is, just stay the heck away from the family Christmas party. That is just where that's the conclusion that we reach. Mishnah Zion. I'm going to go and cry in a minute. So Mishnah Zion. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, Sha'alti es Rabban Gamliel ves Rabbi Yehoshua ba'itlis shel Ama'om. So he was in the marketplace in Ema'om, and he saw Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua. So he went to ask them a halachic question. So he was at Shahalchu likach behema lemishte beno shel Rabban Gamliel. They had gone to this marketplace in order to buy an animal for the wedding feast of Rabban Gamliel's son. So there is Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabban Gamliel out shopping in the marketplace, minding their own business, and Rabbi Akiva comes along and says, while I've got you here, could I ask you a really, really technically detailed question? He said, Haba ala choso, if a person was to engage in an intimate relationship with his sister, while achos aviv, who is also his father's sister. So 1 second. So a person who was to engage in a relationship with his sister and with his father's sister and with his mother's sister, while achos imot behelem echad, in one lapse of awareness, mahu, what would the halacha be? So this has 2 ways of reading it. This could be read as this is 3 different people. So a person had 3 different occasions of 3 lapses in awareness. Either he didn't realize these people were forbidden to him, or he thought they were his wife, and then it turns out afterwards that they weren't. So the question is, what should the halacha be? 3 korbanos or just 1, because it was in 1 time lapse? The other way of looking at this is it's another interesting concoction where the same person ends up being his sister as well as his father's sister as well as his mother's sister, and you're having a relationship once, right? And it's with three different types of forbidden relationship. Either way, what is the halacha? Is it one chatas because they are within the same lapse, or is it three chatats for each violation? So that's the question. Chayav achas al kulan or achas al kol achas ve'achas? Or is it one violation, one korban, or are you bringing multiple korbanos? V'amru li, and they said back to him, "What are you doing? I'm in the middle of shopping for my friend's wedding." No, they didn't say that. He said, "Lo shamanu." We haven't heard the answer to this question. However, aval shamanu, we have heard the answer to the following question, and I would anticipate that you could draw the conclusion from one to the other. The case that they know of was haba al chamesh nashav nidos behelem echad. If a person was intimate with 5 women who were menstruating within one lapse of unawareness, shehu chayav al kol achas v'achas. So if that was what he had done, then he would have to bring 5 korbanos. If he had been intimate with these 5 separate menstruating women, but it was within one time lapse, nonetheless, he's violated 5 times, has to bring 5 korbanos. And I see in this that one, if that's the halacha in the case of the menstruating women, then it's certainly going to be the case for the person who ends up being the sister of the father, the sister of his mother. Those are all separate prohibitions, so they're clearly going to have separate korbanos that are required to bring. Because if a nida, it's one issa, you're violating one prohibition just with 5 different people, and yet it yielded 5 different korbanos, that's going to be the same with a person violating 3 different prohibitions that they are going to need to bring 3 different korbanos. That one was easy, guys. Mishnah Ches. Let's take it up a notch. V'od shalan Rabbi Akiva. While I've got you here, guys, can I ask you another question? Says Rabbi Akiva. Aver hamadudal bevahema. If you have got a limb dangling off from an animal, mahu, what should be the halacha? What's the question over here? The question is, should it be giving off tum'ah or not? Why is this a question? Because if a limb falls off a live animal, it can contaminate you, right? And for a human being, a limb can contaminate you as well if it comes off. But what if it's dangling? Is it contaminating you or not? It's practically off. So they said back to him, Amru lo shamanu. We haven't heard the answer to this question. Aval, however, shamanu be'eva hamadul dal ba'adam shu tahor. But I do happen to know that a dangling limb from a human being would still be tahor. How do I know this? Shekach hayu mukei shechin shabir shalayim, because there would be people with dangling limbs, right? People with leprosy who would have dangling limbs, and they need to go and get them treated. They need to go and get them amputated. They used to go to the doctor just before Erev Pesach, right? Now, Erev Pesach, everyone has got in their heads that they need to be in Jerusalem, that they need to be able to bring their Korban Pesach. So no one's going to do anything to risk contaminating themselves just before Erev Pesach, right? And yet we see that these people with leprosy would go to the doctor just before Erev Pesach. Holech lo Erev Pesach etzel harofe. They would go to the doctor. V'chotcho ad shehu maniach bo kisa'ora. And the doctor would amputate right up until the very last sinew, right? He would leave it dangling right up until the end. He wouldn't, right up until a hairbreadth of flesh was left, keeping the limb attached. Why would he do that? Well, the implication is going to be that he's still tahor, and the limb is still tahor, even if it's dangling on by a hairbreadth. Because otherwise, why would he do that? He would never risk contaminating himself. So he would cut it off to that point, the tochavo basira, and then he would, I guess, stick something in there to keep it attached to the arm still. V'hu nimshach mimenu, and then he would go away. He would leave the guy to finish the job. And in so doing, the doctor would still be able to go to the Beis HaMikdash. I've completely lost where I am in my book over here. Vahala oseh pischo, and then the guy that pulled off his limb would go and bring his korban pesach. Vaharofet, right, because he hasn't touched the limb, he's like flinged it away. Vaharofet oseh pischo, and the doctor is able to go and bring his korban pesach as well. V'ro'in anusha hadvarim kal v'chomer, and I see in this a kal v'chomer. If that applies to the person's limb, which is more severe when the tumah actually does start, right? That's going to be the same for an animal limb as well. Have you got a question mark, or are you just keeping your hand elevated? No. Heaven forbid should you ask a question on anything that we're talking about. What chance have I got of answering that question? So that's the kal v'chomer. If a person's limb is going to be tahor, even when it's dangling, then obviously they would think an animal's limb is going to be tahor while it's still dangling as well. Mishnah Tes. Va'od sha'alan Rabbi Akiva. 1 second, guys. Before you head off to this wedding, I've got another question for you. Said Rabbi Akiva, asking Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua. He's now asking a question about slaughtering animals outside of the Beis HaMikdash, okay, which would generate a korban chatas for the person that violated in that way. Hashochet chamisha zavachim bachutz behelein echad mahu. What if he accidentally slaughtered 5 sacrifices outside of the Beis HaMikdash in one lapse of awareness? So either he didn't realize there were sacrifices, or he knew there were sacrifices, but he thought he could slaughter them outside. What if he does this to 5 animals in one lapse of awareness? What's the halacha? So asks the Mishnah, Chayiv achas al kulam or achas al kol achas v'achas? Is he chayiv once or is he chayiv 5 times? Amru lo shamanu. We haven't heard the answer to this. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua says, Shomati ba'ochel mizevach echad b'chamisha tamchuin b'helem echad shu chayiv al kol echad v'echad mishum ila. I have heard that if someone was to eat 5 cooked dishes of a sacrifice, that he would be chayav on each of them, because each of those different dishes means that you are violating me'ila, that you are misappropriating temple food. So I know that if you were to do that, you're going to be chayav each time. And I think then that you could extend that same logic into your question over here. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says, Lo kach sha'alan Rabbi Akiva. This was not his question at all about slaughtering outside the Beis HaMikdash. Ela ba'ochel nosar. Rather, his question was about eating leftover sacrifices. Mechamisha zvachim behelem echad. From 5 different sacrifices in one lapse of awareness. Mahu. What's the halacha there? Chayiv achas al kulan or achas al kol achas v'achas. Should it be 1 violation or should it be 5? Amru lo shamanus. They say we haven't heard. Amar Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua says, Shomati ba'ochel mizevach echad b'chamisha tamchuim behelem echad. I did hear that if you were to eat 5 dishes, then you are going to be chayiv 5 times. Shehu chayiv al kol achas v'achas mishum ila. That you're going to be chayiv 5 times because of misappropriating temple sacrifices or temple property. And I see that there is a kal v'chomer to be learned. I'm a Rabbi Akiva, but Rabbi Akiva says back to Rabbi Yeshua, Im halacha, if you're going to tell me that this is a received tradition, fine, nekabel, then I'm going to accept what you're saying. V'im ladin, but if you're going to tell me that your whole principle here is based on logic, then yesh teshuvah. Then I've got a refutation. I've got a response that's going to refute what you're saying. Amallah, so he said back to him, Hashem. So he said, go on then, tell me your response. So Amallah, Rabbi Akiva says, Lo, this isn't going to be the place. This isn't going to be the case. You're not going to be able to draw a kal v'chomer from 5 violations of eating nosar, of eating leftover food, to my case, my question. Sorry, you're not going to be able to bring your case of 5 cooked dishes to 5 cases of nosar. Ima marta b'me'ila. if you want to say that by the violation of misappropriating temple property, Me'ilah has a unique component to it, because somebody who feeds someone else Me'ilah is going to be judged like someone who ate it. And someone who gives benefit of Me'ilah to somebody else is going to be judged like someone who has derived benefit himself. So the halacha would be that if you violated that multiple times in one lapse of awareness, then it's going to combine together. But how then could you apply that logic, Tomar benosar? You then want to apply that logic to nosar, she'ein bo echad mikol elu, which doesn't have these same halachot as Me'ilah does. So if you're going to tell me that this is a received tradition from your rabbis, that's fine. I'm gonna go on board with it. But if you're basing this purely on logic, then I'm sorry, I can't agree, because I've got a way of contradicting or refuting your logic. Finally, Mishnah Yud. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, Shoalti es Rabbi Eliezer. I asked Rabbi Eliezer, Ha'ose melachos harbe, b'shabbasos harbe. Somebody who did a lot of different malachot, which are prohibited on Shabbos, and he did them over several Shabbatot, right? Either he didn't know it was Shabbos, or he didn't know that it was forbidden to do on Shabbos. So it's b'shogeg, he's forgetting, right? So if he has done multiple malachas over multiple Shabbosos, and he did it all in one time lapse, right? No one told him. Mahu, what's the halacha? Chayv achas al kulan. Is he going to be liable for each and every single violation? Sorry, is he going to be liable once for all of those violations, or achas al kol achas v'achas? Or is he going to be liable each time for each violation? Omar li, and Rabbi Eliezer said back to me, chayav al kol achas v'achas mikal v'chomer. Because of a kol v'chomer, I'm going to tell you that he is liable each and every time. What's the case that he brings? Uma im hanida, with a woman who is menstruating, she'ein ba totzaot harbe v'chataos harbe, who is not going to be subject to multiple actions, meaning, right, a person who is intimate with a nida, right, is not going to be doing multiple different things. There's only one thing that you could do to a nida, which is forbidden, right? She'ein ba totzaot harbe v'chataot harbe, and yet chayv al kol achas v'echas. So each time a person is intimate with a nida, they are going to be liable, even though there is only one violation that they could be doing. So then, Shabbos sheyesh ba totzaot harbe, with Shabbos where there's so many different things that you could violate, so many different malachas, the chataos harbe, and you could generate so many different violations. Is it not logical, therefore, to say that you're going to be liable each and every time for each and every different malacha? Amarti lo, but Rabbi Akiva said back, no, it's not. Im amarta benida sheyesh ba shtei azharos, with a nida, there are two distinct Torah prohibitions that are in play here. Shehu muzhar ala nida, va'nida muzhares alav, because the man is cautioned by the Torah that he's not allowed to be intimate with a nida, and a nida is cautioned by the Torah that they're not allowed to be intimate with a man. So if nida, which has two elements to the caution to it, Torah b'Shabbos she'ein ba ela azhara achas. Shabbos only has one azhara. It only has one direction of flow for the warning. You can't violate Shabbos. So we can't compare these two things, these two halachot, because they're very, very different. Amali, but Rabbi Eliezer said back to me, Haba ala katalos yochiach. Okay, so let's bring a different case where you should be able to apply your logic, and that is a person who is intimate with a minor. She'ein bahem ela azhara achas, because there the warning only goes one way, because you've got an adult male who is chayiv in mitzvahs having intimate relations with a minor who is not yet chayiv in mitzvahs, so she doesn't have her own Torah prohibition to be aware of. And yet a person who was intimate with a minor multiple times, and again we strongly discourage this, right? Nonetheless, he would be liable each and every time for within that lapse of awareness. So then, fine, that will be my kol v'chomer. That will be where I go to. Amarti lo, but then Rabbi Eliezer said back to him, lo, no, that's not the case. Rabbi Akiva said that's not the case. When it comes to intimacy with a minor, relations with a minor, even though she's not liable now, even though she's not chayv mitzvahs now, eventually she will be. When she becomes an adult, she is going to have this additional warning, this additional prohibition applied to her. But Toma b'Shabbos, but you now want to apply that logic to Shabbos. It's never going to change. It's always going to be one azhara, one morning. The traffic is always only going to go in one direction. So you can't bring that as your proof either. So Amarli, so Rabbi Eliezer said, Haba ala behema yochiach. Fine. Someone who copulates with an animal is going to be my proof, because there it's always going to be one azhara. The man is not allowed to have relations with an animal. If he was to do so on multiple occasions within one lapse of awareness, he's going to be liable multiple times. That's my proof, says Rabbi Eliezer, and that is and that would then mean that we can make a kol v'chomer to Shabbos, and Shabbos as well is going to yield multiple korbanot. Amarti lo, Rabbi Akiva says, Behema Shabbos. I have the same question on animals as I do on Hilchos Shabbos. So at the end of all of that, Rabbi Akiva is still not having any of it, because he's got the same question on animals as he does for Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer would say that it's multiple violations, multiple korbanos. The problem lies unresolved between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. But with that, we finish chapter 3, and we say mazel tov on sticking that one out. Well done, no pun intended. Do we want to go into chapter 4? It's a bit shorter, and we've still got time before Mincha. Should we keep on going? Or are you absolutely done and finished?
I can't wait, because I've got to get down the road to my Mincha.
All right. And Mark and Philip?
And I can
You've
wait.
got the energy, it's up to you.
Adrian, are you going to be happy if I send you the link to catch up on chapter 4?
Yes, please, if you would. And also, just to let you know, I'm away on holiday tomorrow, back on the 4th of July. So
You
I'm
are?
not around.
Okay,
Have a good
so
trip.
to the millions watching
Thank
on
you.
YouTube, no one is going to be in Adrian's house. All right, here we go, guys. Chapter 4. We can do this one much quicker, I think, and then we can all breathe a sigh of relief and go and get some fresh air. Mishnah Daled is going to discuss the circumstances to warrant a korban chatas or a korban asham talui, and when does one fall? When does one apply, and when does the other apply? So the Mishnah says in Mishnah Aleph, Safek achal chelev, Safek lo achal. If a person had a doubt as to whether he ate forbidden fat, and va'afilu achal, and even if he ate forbidden fat, even if he knew that he had definitely eaten forbidden fat, Safek yesh bo kashir, Safek she'ein bo. He doesn't know if he ate the right amount to warrant bringing a korban. Chelev v'shuma lefanav, or in a situation where he has definitely eaten either forbidden fat or let me try that one again. Chelev v'shuma lefanav, or where he has got forbidden fat and permitted fats in front of him. Achal es echad mehen ve'en yadua eza mehen achal, and he eats one of them and he doesn't know which one he has eaten. Okay, so these are all going to be cases where he's just not sure what he has done. So what in one of the cases he's in the clear, and in one of the cases he's violated and he's not sure. So either he's eaten fat or he hasn't eaten fat, or he's eaten fat but he doesn't know if he ate enough, or he's got a piece of forbidden fat and a piece of permitted fat and he doesn't know which of them he has eaten. Or his wife and his sister are with him in the house. Shagag ba'achas mehen ve'en yadua b'hen me'eza mehen shagag, and he's forbidden to both of them. No, he hasn't. Sorry. Let me try one again. Ishtova achosa, his wife and his sister are in the house, and he doesn't know which one of them he has had a relationship with, right? Picture the scene. So that's another example. Shabbos v'yom chol, or he's got a or Shabbos and a weekday. V'asat malacha ba'achas mehen v'ein yadur ba'eza mehen asa. And he knows, I know that I lit a fire, but I can't remember if it was on Shabbos or if it was on Friday. I don't know what I've done. So in all of these cases of doubt, the Mishnah says, Mevi Asham Talui. This is when you have to bring your limbo guilt offering. Until the issue can be resolved, you've got to bring something, but you can't bring a korban chatat because you don't know that you've sinned. So therefore you have to bring a limbo guilt offering because you're not sure. Maybe you violated, maybe you didn't. Maybe it was forbidden, maybe it was permitted. Maybe I definitely ate something which I shouldn't have eaten, but it wasn't the right amount. I don't know, I'm not sure. Therefore you bring a korban asham talui. Mishnah base. Kashem shem achal chelev v'chelev behelem echad eino chayev ela chatas achas. In the same way, where if you ate pieces of fat in one lapse of awareness, and you're only going to need to bring one chatas, kach al lo hadash lahen eino mevi ela asham echad. So too, if you had multiple lapses, but you weren't sure in each of those instances whether I had or I hadn't, whether it was this or it was that, so you're only going to be liable for one korban asham. Im haisa yadia beintaim. But if you were made aware in between, right? So you ate a piece of fat, then someone said, "Hey, you shouldn't have eaten that piece of fat," and then you forgot again. You weren't sure. Oh, maybe this is a kosher piece of fat. I'm going to eat it again. So now you're going to. So now you've entered into a new lapse of awareness. In the same way that you would then have to bring multiple korbanot chataot for each time that you violated. So therefore, within each lapse of awareness now, you're going to have to bring a korban asham v'talui, even if, was it this, wasn't it this, I've got this doubt, got that doubt, blah, 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 blah. If it was in separate lapses of awareness, you're going to be liable each time. Similarly, kashem shem achal chelev v'dam nosar figul behelem echad chayv kolachas v'yachas. Just like if you ate a piece of fat, a bit of blood, a bit of nosar, a bit of pigul, it was all in one lapse of awareness, and you're going to be chayav each and every single time. Kach al lo hodah shelahen. So too, if you weren't sure if you ate it, if it wasn't the right amount, if it was this, if it was that, you're in doubt. Maybe asham talui al kol achas v'achas. So you're going to have to bring a separate korban asham v'talui for each and every single one of those. Chelev v'nosar lefanav. What about a situation where a person has forbidden fat and forbidden nosar in front of him? So these are two forbidden pieces. You know they are forbidden, but achal echad mehem v'ein yadua eza mehen achal. I've definitely eaten one of them, but I don't know which one I ate. So I know that I have done something wrong. It was the right amount. It was definitely forbidden, but I don't know what I've eaten. What if ishton nida va'achosa imaboaz? What if my wife is in her menstrual cycle, so I'm not allowed to be intimate with her? My sister's also in the house. Shagag be'achas mehen ve'en yadur be'ezo mehen shagag. And I've had hanky-panky with one of them, and I don't actually know which one I had hanky-panky with, but they were both forbidden to me at the time. Shabbos v'yom kippurim, or it was Shabbos, or it was Yom Kippur. Let's say Yom Kippur fell on a Friday or a Sunday, which nowadays I don't think we can have, but theoretically it's possible. So what if it was Shabbos or Yom Kippur, v'yasa malacham ben hashmashas, and a person did malacha during the twilight period, and I don't know if I have violated Shabbos or if I violated Yom Kippur. I've definitely violated one of them. So what's the halacha? Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas. Rabbi Eliezer is going to say, well, you violated something, you know you've done a prohibition, so therefore you have to bring a korban chatas. You did it b'shogeg, you did it unwittingly, but you violated something, and so you're going to have to bring a korban. Rabbi Yehoshua poter. Rabbi Yehoshua says, you've definitely transgressed something, but you don't know what you've transgressed. So you can't bring anything because you don't know what you've done wrong. You can only bring a korban chatas if you can identify the sin that you have done. Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Lo nechlaku al ha'osa melacha ben hashmashes shehu patur. They only argue about a person. Sorry, let me try that one again. Rabbi Yossi says they don't argue about someone doing a malacha during Bein Hashmashas, during the twilight period, whether it was Shabbos or Yom Kippur. Right? They don't argue about that. They would both say that you are patur, that you are exempt. Sha'ani omer miktsas malacha asa mehayom miktsas alamacha, because actually what you would say is that you've performed you've done the malacha and it was part that day and part that day. So we would all agree that there's an exemption over there. But then he says, Rabbi Yossi says, V'amar nechlaku, where then would they disagree, right? Where they come out on polar opposite sides. Al ha'osa b'toch hayom. It's when you have done the malacha on the day itself. Ve'ein yadua im b'shabbos im asa v'im b'yom ha'kippurim asa. But you don't know, did I do it on Shabbos or did I do it on Friday? Friday was Yom Kippur, or Sunday was Yom Kippur. I know I did it on one of those days, but I don't know which one. So if that's the case, then you would have this machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer would say, well, you definitely violated something, so you're going to have to bring a korban. Rabbi Yehoshua would say, you don't know what you've done wrong, so there's not going to be a korban. So that's one case. Or al ha'oser, you've done it, ve'ein yadua me'ein ezo malacha asab. You don't know which malacha you did. That could be the other alternative. I know that I did it on Shabbos, but I don't know which malacha I did. So Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas for Rabbi Yehoshua pater. So Rabbi Eliezer is going to say chayev, and Rabbi Yehoshua is going to say patur, exempt. Amar Rabbi Yehuda potra haya Rabbi Yehoshua af me'asham talui. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehoshua, when he says patur, it even means from a korban asham. So we've got a potential two-way understanding of what Rabbi Yehoshua even meant. When he says you're exempt, you can't even bring a korban asham, or you can bring a korban asham. So there's even a disagreement there as to what he would hold. Fascinating nonetheless. And to finish off this evening, guys, Mishnah Gimel, Rabbi Shimon Shazuri for Rabbi Shimon. Just as if things weren't confusing enough, we've now got two people by the name of Rabbi Shimon, but one of them is Rabbi Shimon Shazuri, and one of them is Rabbi Shimon. So what do they say? Lo nechlaku al davar shehu mishum shem echad shehu chayav. So going back to our machlokes with Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua, they don't argue about something that was under the same malacha. So let's say he's cut something. You're not allowed to harvest on Shabbos, right? There's a one malacha called harvesting, but you can harvest different things. You could harvest wheat and you could harvest barley. So he's not sure, did I harvest wheat or did I harvest barley? So I know that I harvested something, but I don't know what it was. So Rabbi Shimon Shazuri, Rabbi Shimon say that actually everyone would agree, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua would agree that you're chayav. If you've done a malacha, and you know which malacha you've done, but you don't know what you cut, you're going to be chayav. What then do they argue about? Al davar shehu mishum shnei shemas, about something that would be under two different categories of malacha. So, for example, I don't know. It was definitely wheat, but I don't know if I harvested the wheat on Shabbos or if I ground it up into flour on Shabbos. I can't remember which malacha I ended up doing. So there it's going to be a machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas, Rabbi Yehoshua poter. Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav chatas. Rabbi Yehoshua says you're going to be exempt. Does that mean completely exempt? Does that mean exempt, but you still have to bring an asham talui? That's what we saw at the end of the previous Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Afilu niskavein lelaket te'enim v'liket anavim." Even if a person intended, right? So there's nothing b'shogeg here. He was planning to harvest te'enim, which are figs, and he ended up harvesting grapes. or anavim v'likei te'anim. He intended to break Shabbos and to harvest grapes, but he ended up harvesting figs, right? Even then, there's going to be an exemption here. Shechoros v'likei levanos, or even to the extreme that he wanted to harvest black olives and or black grapes, and he ended up or figs, and he ended up harvesting white ones, levanot v'likei shechora, or white ones, and he ended up harvesting black ones. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas, but Rabbi Yeshua poter. If you don't know what you've done, if you can't put a proper finger on it, if you didn't do what you had set out to do, then, sorry, you didn't plan to do this, B'mezid. You planned to do this, you just didn't realize it was Shabbos, so it would still be B'shogeg, right? But you planned to do something, and you knew what you were doing, but you ended up doing the wrong thing. Rabbi Eliezer is going to say chayav chatas, Rabbi Yeshua is going to say poter. Amar Rabbi Shimon, tameha ani im yifta ba Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Shimon says, I'm going to be shocked to the core if Rabbi Yeshua is going to exempt even in that situation. Im kain lama ne'emar asher chataba. If so, why would we have this verse talking about where a person has sinned, right? Why would this verse? What would Rabbi Yeshua be learning from here? When would you be chayav if not in that case? Then, so the Mishnah answers parat lemisasek. The Mishnah answers that this verse talking about where a person had done a sin, it's where that he had ended up cutting something which he thought was already detached from the ground. So he was yanking off this grape, this fig, whatever it was. He thought it was detached. It ended up being attached. That's where Rabbi Yehuda is going to say that you're going to be chayav v'chatas. But in all of these other instances, despite the fact that you've got a pasuk, Rabbi Yehoshua is going to say that you're going to be exempt. Mazel tov, everybody, on completing chapter 4 of Maseches Kerisus, and that is all we have got time for. That was all any of us could really have done anyway. 1 hour and 12 minutes. That is quite substantial, but we've done it, and we've now got 2 chapters left on Maseches Kerisus. Shkoyach, Mazel tov, well done to you all. We'll see you next time.